The film begins with some background information on the space mission. Tantalus Base, a Martian research base, was established in the 2040s, and an 8-person crew has been stationed there for 6 months. They are only 19 hours away from finishing their research mission. Aurora, an Earthbound spacecraft, is on its way to collect the team via a lander. Following that, we see a rover carrying Vincent Campbell and Rebecca Lane arrive on the field to pick up scientist Kim Aldrich. Kim is busy collecting samples, so the rover must wait. She is dissatisfied that they have made no significant discoveries on Mars and will soon return to Earth empty-handed. Unlike Kim, scientist Marko Petrovic appears to be in good spirits back at the base. Due to a malfunction, he informs Captain Charles Brunel that he needs to go on an extravehicular activity on the surface. Due to a storm, the gamma sensor on Site 9 is not responding correctly. Brunel reluctantly grants him permission, but requests that Petrovic bring crewmate Richard Harrington with him. He then instructs them to return before dark and attend the final briefing. Harrington and Petrovic set out on Rover 2 just as Campbell and Lane return with Kim to the Tantalus Base. At the Tantalus Base, tensions are high. The cooling systems have failed. Vince also discovers that half of Aurora's CO2 scrubbers are malfunctioning, and the spacecraft is following an unusual approach trajectory. Kim is irritated that she was forced to return to the base so early, while Petrovic, with whom she disagrees, is allowed to go out. Kim, who is naturally inquisitive and competitive, then begins going through Petrovic's workstation. She and the rest of the team quickly learn from his workstation that Petrovic discovered samples of bacterial cell division, i.e., evidence of life on Mars. They then realize that, in order to keep his discovery hidden, he devised a ruse for a final extravehicular activity on the surface. Brunel quickly declares the site off-limits, but Petrovic arrives before Brunel. Petrovic obtains the soil containing the biological agent. When the ground Petrovic is standing on gives way and he falls into a sinkhole, he is amazed and delighted with the discovery and asks Harrington to come out of the rover with a camera. Harrington, terrified and panicked, then issues a mayday call. Brunel and his crewmate Dalby arrive on the scene quickly. Dalby insists on going down into the sinkhole to save Petrovic, but Brunel refuses. He isn't optimistic about Petrovic surviving the fall without compromising his spacesuit. Dalby sobs as he pronounces Petrovic dead. Brunel then informs them that they must retrieve the lifting equipment from the base in order to descend to the sinkhole and retrieve Petrovic's body. He then adds that they must also obtain approval from Mission Control. Dalby insists on staying on site because she cannot leave Petrovic alone in the sinkhole. Brunel and Harrington agree to leave Dalby on site and return to the base to collect the lifting gear and Mission Control approval. Because of the accident, emotions are running high at the base. Kim insists on remaining focused on the mission and announcing the groundbreaking discovery, but the other crew members are taken aback by Kim's indifference to the loss of one of their colleagues. When the crew asks her to show some human decency, Kim, who is cold and candid by nature, responds by indirectly accusing Harrington of killing Petrovic. Harrington loses his cool, and everyone tries to calm him down. Soon after, Mission Control authorizes the team to retrieve Petrovic's body. Brunel contacts Dalby at the site aboard Rover 2 and informs her that they are returning to her at the site when Dalby hears someone entering the rover. After that, Brunel loses contact with Dalby. When a team arrives at the Fisher site, Dalby is gone. While Lane and crewmate Irwin inspect Rover 2 and find it empty, Brunel and Campbell venture into the sinkhole. Because the sinkhole is emitting a lot of steam, the bottom isn't visible. Dalby may have fallen into the sinkhole, the team speculates. Campbell enters the sinkhole after tying himself to the rover with a safety rope. Campbell discovers that Dalby and Petrovic are not in the sinkhole after exploring it. He also claims to have seen fungal organisms at the bottom of the pit when Irwin, who is inspecting the surrounding area on foot, reports 2 pairs of footsteps heading towards the bottom. Brunel suspects they are Dalby and Petrovic's footsteps, but is perplexed by their decision to walk all the way to the bottom rather than take the rover. Kim and Harrington prepare for 2 possible casualties back at the base. Petrovic appears unexpectedly outside the base. The airlock is quickly opened by Harrington, and Petrovic enters the base, collapsing on the ground. When a worried Harrington opens Petrovic's helmet, he is surprised to see a blackened, zombie-like Petrovic gasping for air. Petrovic has been transformed into a fast, aggressive, intelligent, zombie-like creature with blackened skin and no resemblance to his original personality as a result of his exposure to the fungal organism. Petrovic then takes an electric drill and drills a hole in Harrington's abdomen. Dalby, a zombie, then appears and begins chasing Kim around the base. Harrington, who is severely injured, manages to drag and lock himself inside the control. He sends a mayday signal to Brunel before succumbing to his injuries. The 2 zombies then attack Kim in a horde. Kim notices Dalby drinking water from the laboratory floor like an animal while fighting off Petrovic. Kim eventually manages to isolate herself from them. Brunel arrives at the base and orders Campbell to wait outside while Lane and Irwin secure the other side. Brunel is alarmed when he arrives in Kim and sees a possessed Dalby and Petrovic frantically attacking the gate. He tells Kim to get dressed while he stands guard at the door. Kim quickly suits up and exits the airlock. Petrovic, who is now possessed, attacks Brunel with a pickaxe below his collarbone, but he manages to flee outside and eventually lock the zombies inside. Outside, the remaining crew rushes a fatally injured Brunel into the hydroponic dome. They place him on a table and clean his wound, but they are surprised to see that there is no blood coming out of his wound. Brunel then complains of memory loss and thirst, so Irwin brings a bottle of water and quenches Brunel's thirst when he suddenly begins choking Irwin with his hand. Brunel has been exposed to the organism and is slowly resurrecting as a zombie. The terrified crew then binds him to the table. Meanwhile, Dalby and Petrovic blow up a section of the dome and escape, effectively shutting down all communication services. Recognizing the importance of contacting the Aurora lander, Campbell returns to the Tantalus base to repair the communication services by using the oxygen feed pipe that connects the Tantalus base and the hydroponic dome. Lane collects Brunel's blood sample and studies the bacteria that turns humans into monsters, as he watches Brunel slowly transform into a zombie. Lane and Kim use them to test a variety of antibiotics against the bacteria in the hopes of finding a cure. They decide to deliver the solution to the zombie's body using the decontamination spray in the airlock. They then put the antibiotic to the test on a tethered Brunel. The bacteria in Brunel's bloodstream stop multiplying and show no motility after being injected with the antibiotic. Back at the base, Campbell repairs the communication services and connects with the Aurora lander. However, the communication breaks down again just as he issues a mayday call. Dalby and Petrovic, tired of failing to break into the hydroponic dome, begin returning to the base. Kim quickly opens the airlock, luring the zombies back to them. Dalby accepts the bait and returns to the hydroponic dome, but Petrovic vanishes. Lane then discovers that the antibiotic's effect is only temporary, and the bacteria are rapidly developing resistance. Campbell soon discovers that the communication was hampered by a reanimated Harrington. Campbell is chased into the oxygen feed pipe by Harrington. Campbell makes it into the hydroponic dome, but a zombie Harrington joins him, and a struggle ensues. Kim then diverts Harrington's attention and orders the rest of the crew to rush to the airlock. Irwin collapses and struggles to get up, but Campbell and Lane make it to the airlock. Harrington eventually subdues Kim, but Irwin wastes no time in trapping her and closing the airlock behind him. The remaining crew decides to flee to the rover, but Dalby manages to stab Lane's leg with a scissor inside the airlock before she escapes. The survivors Campbell, Irwin, and Lane begin their journey towards the Aurora lander landing site, only to discover that the rover lacks sufficient power to reach the location. They then decide to reach the other fully charged rover, which is still near the fissure. Irwin steals the second rover under the guise of a scouting mission after arriving at the sinkhole site, fearful of Lane's possible infection. Irwin then warns Campbell that if he wants to accompany him on Rover 2, he must abandon Lane. Meanwhile, Irwin is attempting to conceal evidence of his possible infection. Campbell refuses Irwin's offer and stays with Lane on Rover 1. Campbell and Lane fall asleep while waiting for the sun to rise and the solar-powered batteries to recharge. Campbell wakes up alone in the rover the next morning, realizing Lane has fled into the desert, fearing she will attack him due to her infection. He spots her footprints in the sand and pursues her. Campbell eventually finds her in the desert and begs her to return. Lane, after failing to deter him from following her, commits suicide by removing her helmet out of desperation. Campbell, who is terrified and sobbing, holds Lane in his arms as she dies. Campbell, bereaved, is mourning his loss when Lane reanimates and begins attacking him. He tries to hold her and begs her to stop because he is blinded by love. Lane begs Campbell to kill her, despite the zombie inside her. Campbell eventually agrees by bashing her head in with a rock. The Aurora lander is then approached by Campbell and Irwin separately. The zombies rush towards the Aurora lander as soon as it touches down. The zombies quickly encircle the lander. Campbell tries unsuccessfully to warn the unwary crew not to open the bay doors. By the time he arrives at the lander, all of the crew members have been slaughtered. As he approaches the lander, he notices a reanimated Kim feeding on a dead crew, while Petrovic and the other zombies appear to be devoid of moisture and inert. Campbell boards the lander with caution, expecting an attack. He eventually makes it to the cockpit, and is astounded to discover an infected Irwin who still wishes to return to Earth. Irwin, panting, then tries to recall his daughter's name. He expresses his desire to feel his hands again to Campbell. Campbell sympathizes with him and helps him remember his daughter's name, but then tells him that they can't return the bacteria to the Earth. Irwin then attacks Campbell with an infected knife, but Campbell stops him and swats the knife from his hand. Irwin, on the other hand, slams Campbell to the ground, picks up his knife, and stabs Campbell's helmet, slashing his cheek. Irwin then returns to his seat and prepares to launch, but Campbell pulls out the knife and attacks him once more. As the lander flies vertically into space, they struggle to eliminate each other. Campbell eventually subdues Irwin by repeatedly slamming his helmet on Irwin's head. When the lander enters Mars orbit, their bodies, along with Irwin's virulent tar-like blood droplets, begin to float on the ship. Campbell then drags Irwin's body and blood-stained helmet into the airlock and opens it, ejecting Irwin and his virulent blood droplets into space. Later, in a message to Mission Control, Campbell states that he does not have enough fuel to reach the Aurora, but that supplies on board can last for months if a rescue mission is launched. He then warns them that this may not be a good idea because he may be infected. If that's the case, he claims to have just enough fuel for re-entry into the atmosphere and a quick death. Campbell estimates that the transmission will take 15 minutes to receive and will wait for their response. He then terminates the communication while still floating alone in space.